You're welcome.
So good evening, everyone. I have great pleasure in welcoming you to Udhbava, the Museum Studio, and to this evening's webinar on the art, culture, and science of love by Dr. E.S. Krishnamurthy. I can't think of a better way of celebrating Valentine's Day. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the speaker, and I think I'll be safe in saying that he needs no introduction. This is the third in the series of Udhbava's immersion events. Yeah, without much delay, I invite the speaker to tell us about the art, culture, and science of love.
Thank you. Thank you, Gayatri. Gayatri was actually tickled pink by the thought that I was going to be speaking about the art, culture, and science of love. Given that I'm left-brained and terribly linear in most of what I do. As I said, we got three things happening. Nice to have a studio audience. It's a podcast we record every week. And of course, we've opened it out on the webinar as well. So welcome to Udhbava. Basically, it's a museum studio where Gayatri creates and curates with you and for you. The reasons she does this are for cultural preservation, for personalized artistry, and to tell stories through art. And what you see here on display and what can be created very much, follows that sort of those principles. This whole area is called mixed media craft. It's a form of visual art that employs an aesthetic blending of materials like assemblages, collages, and sculpture. And she plays with paint, textile, paper, wood, glass, handicrafts, found objects, and more to create exclusive, objects of beauty. This, for example, is what's on the screen, for example, is a puja panel, which incorporates some olai chudis, palm leaf manuscripts. It incorporates fabric. And of course, it also displays, it's a space to display figurines as well. What you see in the studio and on the screen is a space separator, which again is mixed media. It's heritage wood, Burma teak, a coat stand that actually has been repurposed. And it has, apart from, wood and fabric, it has glass, it has mirrors, it has metal, and it has the Buddha, which is, I think, resin. So it's really multiple different materials coming together. There are trays of various kinds inlaid with various forms of textiles and rattan. There are coasters, there are bookends, there are cutlery holders, and this whole line is called Maram. The Navratri Gulupadi that you see is actually quite special. It's made of teak. It's too big to display in the studio. What's very nice about it is that it actually flat packs and can go under a cot at home when Gulu is over. And it has these two totems on either side on top with Gauri heads. So we got this idea from totem poles. So basically, totems with Gauri heads is what makes the padi special, apart from the fact that it flat packs. And that's the visual mirror. Again, it is there in the studio. We all display for Vishu, the bounty of the harvest in front of the mirror. And this mirror is quite special. So it's got old pictures of gods and goddesses and a mirror, and you can actually put your entire Vishu in front of it. It can be a display piece at all times if you don't want to put it away. It folds for you to put away as well. So basically what the cafe offers is a melange of tradition. There's interior decoration support. There's a minimal cafe which serves a few things to eat. One can use it as a kind of a workspace, and one can do one's own creative pop-ups here as well. So welcome to Udhbava, the museum studio. And I think we are very happy to be here today to do this edition of the Neurokrish podcast. I picked the topic, the art, culture, and science of love, to sort of go with the theme. I thought we should look at Valentine's Day a little differently. And of course, these are the crazy things you do as you get older. So that's the theme. The Cambridge University dictionary defines love is to like another adult and to be romantically and sexually attracted to them, or to have strong feelings of liking a friend or a person and family. And we often say that we love a person. It doesn't always have to be romantic. We say we love people. And as Rumi says, there is a candle in your heart ready to be kindled. There is a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? So in a way, everyone in some way or the other is looking out for this expression of emotion. It's an emotion that everyone seeks in one way or the other. We even seek it from the animals we love. So, cuddling our dogs, for example, is a very big thing for most of us who are fond of dogs. So I think there are many examples of why you would feel love. Now, what I've done is picked a series of very important paintings from around the world. They go from the 1600s and to the 21st century. And what I'm doing is talking about the various emotions of love as they've been depicted in the painting, and then discussing the neuroscience and the culture that goes with it. So this is a painting called The Woodsman's Daughter by John Everett Millius, and it's in the Guildhall Art Gallery in London. It shows a young boy who is probably the landowner's son, who is attracted to the woodsman's daughter. And of course, this takes you back to the Wonder Years, if any of you have watched the serial. So he's pale and sobered by the unfamiliar aching beneath the breastbone. The girl is surprised and delighted. She extends a receptive and guileless hand for the strawberries that he's offering. And so these are the first stirrings of love. And here's another painting by Renoir. It's called The Ball, and it's at the Bougival Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. It captures a moment. And, the original sketch that Renoir did, he wrote behind it, she was waltzing in delicious abandon in the arms of a blonde man with the manners of a boatman. Perhaps this was the moment of falling in love. And as Proust says, the sacred moments in our lives lift us above the profane world, the act of love. So again, this, like that young lad who was attracted to the woodsman's daughter, this is a moment when a man and a woman are dancing in a ball, and they obviously are attracted to each other. So what happens when you fall in love? Actually, it's a very stressful moment. And this is something that most people don't recognize straight out, right? Your brain releases cortisol, right? And when your brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, along with that come a lot of feelings of stress. The heart is beating fast, and so on. All that comes, and there are therefore physical and emotional responses, flushed cheeks, feelings of passion, anxiety, and so on. So you're trying to cope with the crisis in hand. But at the same time, what happens is there's another chemical called serotonin, which is actually important to keep our mood stable, important to keep our thoughts in control. Serotonin gets depleted. And therefore, that's the reason they say that people get these obsessive thoughts in those first stirrings about the person that they have fallen in love with. Because that's what makes you want to somehow talk to that person, contact that person, chase that person, seek a response. And all this is the balance of cortisol and serotonin in your brain that's making you do all that. The lack of serotonin and the excess of cortisol. Then, of course, you progress to displays of passion. And this is a painting by Klimt, Gustav Klimt. It's in Vienna. I can't pronounce the name of the gallery. It's one of his most beautiful and erotic paintings. And like Freud, Klimt was focused on sexuality as the primary spectacle and motivation of life. And by the time he painted this painting, he had come to believe that the dynamics of the entire cosmos were predicated on one principle, fertility and regeneration. And so that basically is the story of this painting, which depicts passion. Another by Hayes, again called the Kiss, which is in Milan. And this is how the book describes it: the tenderness of the man's hand upon the woman's face, his other hand possessively holding her head, the suppliance of her lovely body in this exquisite satin dress, learning so yearningly against his. So again, this is a moment of passion that is captured. But in this period, the moments of passion, it's also a time when you can stray. You've had one conquest, you may start seeking another conquest, and we'll talk about the neuroscience of what happens in this time frame. So you look at this painting called Lovers in a Park by Boucher. It's in the Park Timken Gallery in San Diego. There are three figures, which is unusual. The lovers are at the right, caught in a moment of woodsy intimacy, wherein he is placing flowers in her hair and she is leaning on his head. Their dalliance is interrupted by a flower girl. Their eyes meet. Whose eyes? The man in the painting, the man in the couple, and the flower girl. And even the little dog, the symbol of fidelity, looks up, perhaps in alarm. So no sooner is the blossom plucked and its aroma and beauty enjoyed by the senses than it starts to wilt. In this case, the male turns to look for a younger and more innocent blossom. Right? Now, what's happening here? So basically, when you're in that passionate love, your happy chemical dopamine is being secreted in large quantities. Now, dopamine kind of triggers your reward and pleasure centers, right? Now, once that happens, your brain thinks that I can have this again. So why should I stay with this one person? Why not look for another conquest? And that's really what is going on at that time. And of course, so in that early phase, that's why infidelity happens. I'm not going to try and explain infidelity through other phases of human existence, but in the early phase, that's why this happens. End of the thing is what we decided, because we also have this audience on the webinar. So, as I said, being love struck releases high levels of dopamine, and it activates your reward circuit, making love a pleasurable experience, similar to the euphoria associated with the use of cocaine or alcohol. So that's why, in a sense, at that phase, it is actually addictive. And this person is both, she's a writer and a doctor. And she's quoted as saying, that's what falling in love really amounted to: your brain on drugs. Adrenaline and dopamine, oxytocin and serotonin, chemical insanity celebrated by poets. We'll talk a little bit about the other chemicals. So we now move from that early phase of passion to established close relationships, which are not just romantic, very often they are sexual. And this is a painting of David of Cupid and Psyche. It's in the Cleveland Museum of Art. It's a large picture, says Henry Fonda, who wrote about it. The figure's nearly life-size. And because of David's almost magical realism, you have a feeling you're there with the young lovers. It's impossible not to be envious of their youth, innocence, and joy at the same time that you're enjoying their happiness. Okay, so because it's Henry Fonda, I quoted him. Now, here's another. This is not a painting. It's a sculpture. Comes from Nepal. It's 15th century. It's displayed in New York. This points out that in the East, the demonstration of affection or lovemaking is intensely private, and Oriental lovers do not embrace or even touch each other in public. Maithuna, union, is the holiest of our acts, but this does not prevent it from being fun, warm, and tender. And the reviewer points something else out. Here, uncommonly, the female is larger, the one in power. She is the manifestation of the mother goddess, the real power, which does not mean she cannot be shy. So again, this demonstrates, therefore, that phase when people are passionate and getting very close to each other. And of course, the end outcome of that is conception. And here's a painting by Hughes, which is in Birmingham. The girl's pregnant condition makes the engagement seem too long for the Victorian era, even a trifle long for today. The dog, definitely her dog, appears to be pleading with the young man to marry his mistress. So at least in art, the dog is a frequent accompaniment of various moments of love. Is something that we are learning as we watch these paintings. But what's happening? What happens is that during romantic love, you start, expressing two other chemicals, oxytocin and vasopressin. And the female expresses this more than the male. But these are the chemicals that have roles in pregnancy, nursing, and mother-infant attachment. Oxytocin is released because of close contact, physical contact, and it provokes feelings of contentment, calmness, and security, which are often associated with mate bonding. Vasopressin is linked to behavior that produces long-term monogamous relationships. And the way these hormones work, it's possible, therefore, that why, as the relationship grows, the passion fades and it becomes a little more stable and settled, maybe too stable and settled for everyone's liking. These are the sort of the brain, tracks. The first is a diagram of dopamine pathways. And the second shows you also the various structures that are involved with regard to the release of oxytocin, vasopressin, and the various chemicals and hormones which are released during love. Now, falling in love and having an affair also requires that you take risks. And so the taking of risk, why do people take risks when they are having an affair? Is another question to ask yourself. Perfectly. I don't want to meet your husband after this talk. All right. So this is actually, it's not painting, it's parting. It keeps autocorrecting itself. But it's by Harunobu. It's two lovers parting at dawn. It's in the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. It's obviously Japanese. Harunobu captures this mood perfectly in the moment of parting. Look how gracefully the man inclines his long neck towards his beloved, how wistfully she touches his robe. And we see in Harunobu's print the Japanese feeling for the underlying aesthetic unity of all aspects of life, from loving to leaving, birth to death. It's obviously, like many things, it is minimal and mindful, like many things Japanese. Now, here's another painting, which is by West. It's Romeo and Juliet. It's again in New Orleans. The scene is heightened by a dramatic use of light to heighten the excitement. Yet, the lovers seem curiously unmoved by the danger implicit in their discovery. Only the nurse shows her anxiety. Your lady, mother is coming into your chamber. The day is broke. Be wary. Look out, she seems to say. So, in a sense, why do the lovers not feel that anxiety? Why does somebody who's helping them feel that anxiety? That's the neuroscientific question that we will ask in a moment. Now, here's another painting by Miller. It's called Indian Elopement. It's not India, it's the Red Indians. It's in the Buffalo Bill Historical Center in Wyoming. It's a romanticized version of an ancient tribal custom among Plains Indians. It was a practical way to avoid all kinds of problems, dissenting voices and envy, thus come to the point and accomplish rapidly the major purpose, the fulfillment of love. Because when people lived in small communities, there would be many suitors for the lady. And it's quite possible that, the union would be prevented by various people. So it was actually endorsed that you elope. And once you elope, then nobody else can do anything about it. So the classic elopement represents what is most powerful and romantic about love, the desire of two people to be together, no matter what the odds or danger. Now, so what happens? And very, very interestingly, you have a structure called the amygdala, which is a large nucleus. It's your emotional center. If you draw two lines, it's in the middle on either side. It's the shape of an almond. Okay, that provokes anxiety. So the amygdala is responsible for anxiety. Then you have your frontal lobes, which are the part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is your social brain. It helps you decide whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. Now imagine if you had anxiety and your brain was telling you, oh my God, don't you do this. If you get caught, you know what will happen. You are never going to elope. You're never going to do anything dangerous. You're never going to take the risks that falling in love requires sometimes. Right? So what the brain is very clever. What it does is that these two pathways disconnect each other. Right? And when these two pathways are disconnected, neither are you feeling anxiety, nor are you trying to judge your own actions. And the moment you get to that space of, I'm not feeling any anxiety, I'm not going to judge my own actions, I'm now ready to elope, I'm now ready to wait for my mom to walk into the room. I really don't mind what happens. And so that is the neuroscientific, again, the pathways that are responsible for people taking risks. Now we go to a painting by Sargent. Paul Helio sketching and his wife are the subjects, and this is in the Brooklyn Museum in New York. It was painted in the Flatbury Rectory near Broadway and the Avon River. It talks about companionships and shared interests. So we're now going to the next stage. Why do people develop companionship and shared interests? They contribute as much to a strong relationship as anything does. So Paul's bride will always be by his side, supportive and close, encouraging him by her proximity. Although she admires Helio's talent and he has already obtained a respected reputation during his brief career, her loyalty and love will be felt as they are in this canvas. So this is talking about enduring love between couples who've been together for a period of time. This is an Indian painting of anonymous origin. It exists in a private collection. It dates back to 1850. It's Krishna and Radha, of course. And from the 5th century, this exotic hero was remembered as a lover. His dalliance was interpreted religiously as symbolic of the loving interplay between God and the human soul. With Radha's love came a feast for the senses, music, adoring handmaidens, spicy perfumes, lush carpets, embroidered pillows, a bed suspended from the ceiling. Obviously, that is a divan or a swing. So this is how this is described. And here's a third painting. I'm now focusing clearly on the aesthetic, how aesthetic plays a role in love, how shared sense of aesthetics play a role in love, okay? So this is by Watteau. It's The Melody of Love, the National Gallery, London, dates back to 1717. And it's titled as Music. Surely none of the arts is more interwoven with love than music. And Shakespeare said, if music be the food of love, play on. And so it is that with lovers, music becomes part of the expression of love. And love is forever a part of the expression of music. So we talked about perfumes, carpets, a setting. We talked about being on the side of a river, the man painting, the woman by his side, supportive, and we've talked about music. Now, how is this? As Trimble says in his book, we evolved something as human beings, which we believe animals don't have, although it is possible that some animals who are more evolved, like dolphins, for example, are often talked about as being more evolved, may have this, which is that you develop something called cognitive empathy. And cognitive empathy is your ability to feel what your fellow man is feeling, to appreciate what your fellow man is appreciating, to share the same feelings. And that is something that has developed alongside with the development of humankind. So as humanity developed, as we became social beings, we developed cognitive empathy. So this is probably what is responsible for our being able to feel emotions. This is probably what is responsible for our sense of aesthetic, for our ability to appreciate music, for our ability to appreciate a painting, for our ability to kind of share certain emotions, including love in the context of the aesthetic. Very often people talk about why the setting is important. And I think this is where the setting becomes relevant. If the setting was not right, maybe two people will not fall in love at all or stay in love. Okay. So what happens over time? What happens with lasting love? If this roller coaster of emotions continues, the passion is still there, but the stress is gone. The cortisol, which I told you, which causes stress, becomes normal. The serotonin, which I told you, which goes down, makes you obsessive, comes back to being normal. And love, which started off as a stressor, becomes a buffer against stress. The brain areas associated with the reward and pleasure are still activated as loving relationships proceed, but the constant craving and desire that are inherent in romantic love often lessen as the relationship progresses. So a lovely review of this by Professor Semir Zeki in this article called The Neurobiology of Love, where he talks about all this. I just leave you with one thought which he expresses in the beginning, in the abstract. Yet the biological study of love, and especially romantic love, must go beyond and look for biological insights that can be derived from studying the world of literature of love, and thus bring the output of the humanities into this orbit. I think what we are doing is bringing the humanities a little bit into this orbit. What are we learning from the art of love? What are we learning from the culture of love as we talk about the neuroscience of love? Now, Zeki is famous because he did this study where he showed how your brain changes when you fall in love. And what he says is that the visual input is extremely important. It's not that the voice or the intellect or the charm or the social or financial circumstances, status don't come into play, but the neural correlates of romantic love have mostly been studied due to the visual input. So I fell in love when I saw somebody. That's extremely important, according to Zeki. And the areas that we have highlighted in the picture, those are the areas that light up when people are shown photographs. This is how he did the study. He showed people while they're lying in the scanner, he showed them photographs of the person they are in love with and other neutral photos. And your brain looks different when you see the photo of your beloved. Now, if you want to check whether your beloved really loves you, there is a test. Although you may not want to find out. So we talked about oxytocin and vasopressin. Both are secreted by a structure called the hypothalamus, and they are stored in the pituitary gland. And of course, the concentration increases during the phase of intense romantic attachment. And there are other areas which get activated, like the anterior cingulate cortex and places like that. But what's very interesting is that both romantic feelings and sexual arousal activate this part of the brain called the hypothalamus, but maternal love does not. So the brain behaves differently when it is looking at romantic or sexual love or lust from looking at maternal love. Maternal love is very, very different when it's expressed in the brain itself. And in this study is when I told you that there is this disconnection of two critical brain areas when you're taking risk. What he points out is that you need to be acritical. When you fall in love with someone, or when you make that judgment that I'm going to be with this person, that initial judgment, that criticality needs to go out, just like anxiety and the fear of being caught should not be there. Too much of judgment should not be there. So he's the one who showed us that the parts that light up are these pathways that are responsible for anxiety, that's disconnected, responsible for judgment, that's disconnected. And as a consequence, you are not really making too many judgments about the person. And this is where we say that love is blind. That's where it comes from. This is a wonderful paper, so I'm going to, anyone who's academically interested should read it. I'll just quote Nietzsche, who said, there is always some madness in love, but there is always some reason in madness. And Zeki points out that the reason for the madness is in the brain. It's not really in culture or anything like that. Now, this particular study that I'm talking about showed why people stay madly in love. So they went and looked at 21 couples who remained in love, on a large number of couples, I don't have the exact number, who remained in love 21 years after marriage. And what they showed was the brain is activated as if in all the different phases of love. So there is the dopamine, there is that initial rush, there is the oxytocin and the vasopressin. Everything remains activated for these people. So enduring love is therefore, or staying madly in love, of course, is therefore all these different areas continuing to show activity in your brain. That's what they showed. And again, the excitement of romance can remain, but the apprehension will be lost. So the dopamine-rich areas associated with maternal love attachment, romantic love scores, inclusion of the other in the self, friendship-based love scores, sexual frequency and obsession, all these things start lighting up if you're in love for a prolonged period of time. And it also involves the systems implicated in attachment and pair bonding. So Schwartz, and I keep quoting Schwartz, but Schwartz is, we're talking about Dr. Schwartz in Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. So when you have read the book Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom, this is the Dr. Schwartz we are quoting there. So what he says is that exactly what I was saying, that the dopamine reward systems remains the same as detected in the participants of early stage romantic love. Now, here's a painting about the silver years. And what's very interesting about this painting is this is a painting of an elderly couple who supported the development of a museum. And basically, they became the subject of this painting. It's called Dance in the Country, and it's in Paris. It says very nicely, in the early years of our marriage, we had no quarrels. We were too absorbed and united in earning and eating our bread. In the middle years, as our income rose, we had some brief, two searing disputes. And this is the husband talking. I nearly always gave in. Story of being a husband. Life with her grows sweeter daily. We nurse each other in our sicknesses, and rare is the night when I fail to escort her to bed. So this is the progression of love to that stage of the silver years when your companionship is greater than anything else. And oh, you wild youngsters who flit from mate to mate, scratching surfaces, do you think you know what love is? Is probably the emotion that the person in the silver years is feeling. So this is an infographic from Pinterest. I just picked it up because it actually quite nicely summarizes what is happening. So of course, in the beginning, you have the dopamine, the serotonin, and the adrenal. In the next phase, you have the oxytocin and the vasopressin. And in the later phase, it is obviously all these things stabilizing and no part of your brain actually being overactive or no particular chemical being overactive, which leads to a balanced or an enduring relationship.
One becomes more sane.
Possibly. If you call love an insanity, then one becomes more sane. Yes. So this is Michelangelo, Adam and Eve. It's in the Sistine Chapel. And, in Hebrew, the word Adam means mankind, and the woman is an integral part of mankind, not an offspring of Adam. They are lovers because all that Adam lacks, Eve fulfills, and vice versa. Hence the completeness and oneness of mankind. So in truth, therefore, while there are two parties in love, in many ways, they are one and they have to be one. I'll finish by saying thank you to, this is the book, Lovers. It's compiled by Mary Lawrence. It's a 1982 book. It's beautiful. It's got 100 paintings and a lovely piece written about each painting. I quoted the article by Zeki quite a bit. I'd like to thank Gayatri and Udhbava for the opportunity to be here to do the live podcast. And I'd like to thank the Neurokrish and Buddhi teams who keep working hard. This is Indian who puts the podcast and the events together. And all of you for showing up and everyone who's there online as well. So very happy to take some questions now. I'll stop sharing the screen. Yes, if you use the mic, it'll get recorded in the podcast. You're fine. Yes.
So, my question is, I'm not trying to be witty. I'm just asking. So, for example, if a man is, let's talk about this an affair, okay, extramarital or in marriage or whatever. So, when the person is having an affair, seeing the beloved, then there are some changes. When the person is not with the beloved, but in his own world, in love, during that time, even then, if you see those parts will be lit up.
We don't know the answer to that because most of the studies are actually done by doing this, that they put you into a scanner, they'll show you pictures. So one way in which, for example, we can test this person is show him pictures of his wife, pictures of his beloved, okay, and some other neutral pictures and figure out when the brain lights up, right? But I don't think we do.
So the person doesn't remain in that phase, if not in front of the person.
Well, if you think about it, so the brain imaging can only be done in a certain way. So we are limited by that. But okay, if you've been in love and if you look back at that time, the early phase is always obsessive, and the thoughts don't leave you only when you stop seeing the person. The thoughts stay, right? So there is a certain obsessiveness to it. And therefore, it's the chemical changes also in the brain, not just what lights up. It's the chemical changes in the brain which are driving that entire process.
It is there, kind of.
I think so. As long as the thoughts are there, I presume that the changes are there as well. And as we saw in that painting with 3 people, the thoughts can flit to somebody else because I've now got used to the dopamine rush. So, I could just start thinking about someone else.
That one can take to revive those feelings for your spouse. Which can help dopamine secrete or serotonin and all. It's not helping.
There are hormone therapies. Has anything ever been attempted like that, where the person is treated with these hormones?
So,
conditions.
right. No, so obviously you have hormone therapy which can influence your sexuality. Okay, but love is an entirely different matter altogether. I don't think we have hormone therapy for love. But I can carry out an experiment for all those who are concerned. We have various types of brain stimulation. So we'll keep showing you the picture of the person you want to be passionate about, and we'll keep stimulating your brain, the front of your brain. Maybe you will.
Changes in the brain and all of these serotonin, oxytocin. Is it the same for the male and the female brain, or is it different? Is the male, certain areas of a man's brain are more active? Is that something like that?
There are definitely male-female differences. And I think when it comes to the dopamine, probably the male is a little overrepresented in men. Oxytocin and vasopressin are enduring relationship hormones, so they probably get more secreted in women. And I was just reading something somewhere where, why do women feel attached to the person, but the man is ready to walk out of that relationship already, is not become bonded. And that's because of the oxytocin and vasopressin. The women secrete that much more due to physical contact. It's also part of the maternal urge, bonding, and so on. And therefore, that's perhaps the reason why there's this male-female difference about the intensity of the relationship or the attachment as well.
What about the animal world? Do they have similar hormones and same behavior?
Very much so. There have been studies of wolves, for example, that have talked about this. In fact, yesterday you would have seen it in the Times of India article as well. A Chennai endocrinologist has spoken extensively about the hormones in animals and why you also can fall in love with your dog.
That's the hormone in humans, but what about in animals?
In animals too, there are certain species in whom studies have been done, which have shown that there is capacity for love and there are changes very similar to the kind of changes that you see in humans.
I heard when I was very young that when a man is looking for his lover, I want to know from you, Vishnu, that he looks for traits in a woman who will resemble his mother. And likewise, the opposite. Is that true?
I don't know if we have a biological proof or a biological explanation for that. I think from a social construct, it is often talked about. You're absolutely right. But I don't know if we have biological proof for that. One of the types of studies that might help us for this is what are called face recognition studies. Because facial recognition is what our emotions are based on. Okay, so it is quite understandable that the facial expressions or the way you look at your mother's face and feel about it, and that affection and fondness can get easily mirrored in somebody else who shares similarities. That is entirely possible. So in science, that's probably the only way to study it is look at facial recognition.
So science apart your experience?
I think it's a well sort of, what shall I say, understood social construct, but I don't know if I'm not aware of any proof that it actually is right.
If I say that you are very cruel, because at this stage you are talking about love and romance.
There's an old song in a Tamil movie, "Aimbadilum Asai Varum." I'm kind of rekindling those thoughts a little bit.
Very good. But selection of crowd is not there.
You say the art and craft here in this.
And the third thing that I say, let's talk about this.
Either that or my front of the brain and amygdala are both disconnected. So I'm not. I can blame it on neurotransmitters. Yeah.
It's typical like this.
I have a question about maternal love. And I think.
Yes.
So I think many women here would agree with me that when you're young, you're kind of very attached to the child and you're anxious about the child and so on and so forth. And as you grow older, the mother in particular learns to kind of detach themselves and just to give the child space and so on and so forth. Is it the chemical in the brain that works, or is that anything to do with the brain, or is it just a philosophical thought, or how that philosophy relates to brain science?
So it's a little complex, but let me try and explain it this way. Okay, that instinct, that maternal instinct, is very biological. And it's that bonding with the child and the release of the oxytocin and vasopressin and all that, which is provoking that maternal instinct. But on the other hand, because we are part of society, because we have interactions, relationships, conversations, our thought process get influenced to make judgments which are different. So now that's your social brain working. And your social brain takes cues from your environment, from the people, for example, your own children and how they are responding. Those are cues that your social brain is taking. Your peer group, people you are interacting with, talking to, what they are discussing with you, your social brain takes cues from that. So your modulation of behavior is also psychological and social, not purely biological. Now, if your biological drive is overwhelming, then you become that helicopter parent who is not able to let go of the child. Right? On the other hand, if the psychosocial responses and feedback are appropriate and well absorbed by you, you probably will not be that helicopter parent. So, the same chemicals drive the attachment process. Your what you perceive as reward also matters. So, for example, if you see great reward in what you do with your children, so in a sense, if you see helicopter parents often perceive great rewards in always being with the child and believing that if I am not there with the child, nothing will happen. The child needs me, however old the child is. So obviously there is a reward that you're perceiving. And again, you go back to dopamine. So it's your reward system. So you're obviously, if you perceive reward and biologically you're getting rewarded, then you're much more likely to engage in behavior in which you're biologically rewarded. It is also the basis of all forms of addiction, if you think about it. That, that if you're addicted to something, it's because your pleasure centers are activated by that thing. And you are seeking more and more of that thing as a consequence, which is what we said about the early phase of falling in love, or the phase of passion, where your dopamine makes you want to seek it out again and again and again. And you start emboldened and you think that if I can't get it here, or it's not enough for me to get it here, I'll get it somewhere as well. Absolutely. They're not seeking art and culture, right?
But I agree, a couple of young ones should have been here. Yeah. Then it would have triggered a lot of. Yeah.
Actually, what I have one more to discuss
By the way, Dr. Sagar is an anesthetist. If nothing works, he can put you to sleep.
I say that you should have one more lab, and it should be called a lab.
There you go. Now you're giving me ideas. Why not? Why not? We'll create a space for that.
We need a whole new lecture on what you will do with.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I support that.
We have anything coming from online? Question wise? Okay. Okay, I think time for brownies and coffee or whatever else you feel like. Thank you for being here. Time for the reward. Absolutely.